This week, Kumar and I catch up with the work of two DCP favorites, Chad Bilyeu and David Dye. Chad's series The Re-Up, about his time as a pot dealer 20 years ago, continues and has overcome the skepticism I had of the series at the start. David has released 3 more issues of Amazing Tales and gone in various directions: a Beowulf adaptation, a Burroughs-esque time travel story commenting on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and an EC-type horror comic. We'll discuss all of that this week. First, I'd like to thank our patrons for helping to keep the show going. You can pitch in by pledging at least $2 a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim.
And this is Kumar.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo, and Kumar is here with me for the first half of the show. How's it going?
Pretty good.
So this week we're talking about the latest work from two of our favorites, Chad Bilyeu and David Dye, people who we said had graduated from critiquing comics. I haven't actually talked to him yet. I think I'm going to have Adam on the second half to talk about David's work. So for the first half, Kumar is here with me to talk about the latest from Chad, who, we've talked about his stuff on here a number of times, earliest with Mulele on Critiquing Comics, the Chad in Amsterdam series. And Kumar and I talked about Chad early last year, the first 2 issues of his work, the Re-Up, and then also an anthology he had worked on.
And at that point, I said in the episode, how many issues is this going to be? And we didn't know, but he actually said at the back of issue 2 in the back matter that it was going to be 6 issues. So that seemed to be a foolish question at the time, but actually he's not done. We're up to issue 6 here, and it's not the end of it. So I don't know how long he's planning to go. And I'm glad it's not just 6, because it would have been a devastating kind of finale if he ended the way he did.
That's for sure.
On that last page of issue 6.
Right. So we're talking about 3 through 6 today. His artist on this is Juliette DeWitt. And so the Re-Up is about his experience like about 20 years ago when he was selling marijuana, mostly like on the campus of Georgetown University, where he had also managed to become a student through having a job on the campus in the AV lab. So he talks about how he sort of did the same with his hard work and connections as people did with their father's trust funds, getting into a high-class university. And I have to admit that when I read the first 2 issues, I was a little skeptical of the subject and how much he could really do with it. But reading these 4 issues, I felt like I was completely wrong.
Oh yeah, these are amazing comics, and I think he can go on kind of forever, because it struck me especially with issue 3. It opens with the scene of him pushing a projector into a classroom because he's part of the AV department, and this, he sets up projectors and stuff. But it really looked like one of those panels of Harvey Pekar pushing records around in the file, or pushing files around in that VA hospital and selling records to people. And it was almost the same, like as if this guy's selling marijuana to people instead of trying to deal records. And, his boss was getting mad at Harvey Pekar for doing this on the side and making a few extra bucks at work. But it's a very similar kind of thing where he's just, you get, especially issue 3, where we get to finally meet his customers as his business is growing, and the kind of variety of people and just observations about conversations that he's hearing on campus. It's really American Splendor-like. And he could just go on forever with this material, I thought. It was really interesting.
Yeah, he mentions in the back matter that he has a pad and pen with him all the time, and he's writing down stuff that he hears. And we get, particularly in issue 3, these like overheard conversations that are really interesting, and you kind of want to hear more of it. He just gives you like a little bit of it.
Yeah. But there's a lot going on in this. I mean, it's not just about the dealing of weed, but in a sense that he meets a wide array of people through this, and we get a kind of sense of all their personalities. Like he's dealing to an opera singer, this guy who, all varieties. There's a guy who seems to be a Sikh in a turban, and then they go to like a frat party where they're having a literal toga party at this place. And then he's got these guys that are always trying to scam him and get more weed for less money, or, they're like real prep school types. Just
Are you
all
sure
sorts
this
of
is
people.
half an ounce or something?
Yeah, that kind of stuff is going. People trying to get stuff from him for free. He deals with the campus police. At one stage, this guy's kind of a friend.
Yeah, and he's standing there talking with the campus cop while he's carrying a gym bag full of weed.
Yeah. But then we hear like these conversations where there's people protesting for a living wage for Georgetown workers. And they've got they've got tents set up on campus, and these girls are complaining, like, if they want a living wage, why don't they get a better job? And
is it like it's that easy? Yeah.
And then he hears conversations with other people talking about, like, which yacht are you taking? Like, your dad's yacht or the other yacht? And they're like, oh, that other yacht is so ghetto.
Right.
Like,
I put that in my notes. Yeah. Are you going on their yacht or your yacht? My dad's yacht. Duh. Their yacht is so ghetto. I'm not even certain it qualifies as a yacht. It's more like a lifeboat.
Yeah. But meanwhile, Chad, who seems to be kind of an autodidact, I guess he's like self-taught. There's some really interesting passages. So first I should say there's a bit more of a text image balance in this one, in the sense that in issue 1 there was a lot of text. It was like illustrated prose almost.
Yes.
And issue 2 we had lots of like silent panels. It was like almost all comics, and it was just like one scene almost the whole issue. This time we got a bit more of a mix of the two, but there's this kind of long passage where he describes to us how he ended up working at how he ended up as a student, even though he shouldn't have been able to get into Georgetown. He kind of found this backdoor way in. And it's quite interesting. There's this page where he talks about, he says, like the denizens of an island, these Georgetown students depended on outsiders for the importation of goods and services. And like anyone importing goods and services, they had the funds necessary to purchase anything they desired. Efficaciousness was on my side, and putting my hand into their pockets was firmly on my mind. Hence, it would be fatuous to ignore the potential for remuneration within this collegiate milieu. What they wanted, I had. What they had, I wanted. Now, he's been talking about how he's not like an educated dude on the previous page, but here he's using very specifically like vocabulary that's very intellectual.
I was really noticing his vocabulary reading these, and like eschew shows up. And
yeah, I think he's almost using it for ironic effect, because the next line is a thought balloon, which is, I'm going to take these rich ass bitches for everything I can. So there's like I think there's like a deliberate contrast. Like, he's as smart as anybody on this campus, which comes up again and again because they don't know how to turn on like a projector. That literally came up in issue 1, I think, where this professor didn't know why it wasn't working because he hadn't pressed the power button. So he's as smart as any of the students. As especially in this issue, it becomes clear that these are all just idiots that got in on money because they were loaded. And I think that I found that really fascinating as well. And the way he almost doesn't say it in your face. He just shows it. And he just writes in a way that it's clear that this guy's as intellectual as anyone else, or more so than anyone else on campus. Yeah, I just thought this issue was so great because there's so much going on. There's the drugs, there's the culture, there's the class struggle, and it's just kind of happening in the background. It's all presented very casually in this 24-page comic.
Yeah. So in issue 3 he's getting his customers together. Issue 4 he's not doing as well in school because selling weed takes up all his time, and his teacher's concerned because he seemed so sharp at the beginning, and now he's like not participating in class conversation so much, and he hasn't not getting his homework done, and we have a flat set of flashbacks then where he's thinking about all the things that are taking up his time, and this one customer who's always hours late for their meetup, and he's spending a lot of time on the phone, and people who screw around with him. Like the guy who is holding out two hands, he says the money's in one hand and there's a Tootsie Roll in the other. And Chad just doesn't want to put up with that.
That's
crap.
what's all in issue 4. Yeah, this is where we get all the customers. More than the.
Issue 5 seemed to be more about kind of how he manages his business, and he's got this place where these two girls live, and they let him use their apartment to kind of manage his stash and whatever, and then he gives them a bit of the product as a payment.
Yeah, and so we meet all the kind of the same recurring cast of his customers again. I think 5 for me was kind of the weakest one because it was just more. There was kind of some repetition, if you know what I mean, of what we'd seen in 4. 3 and 4 were really interesting.
Although in 5, I mean, I was completely unaware of this statue. Where he meets the guy at the beginning. He says that it's I found it was in Potomac Park. But Haines Point, Hains. Okay. It looks like this large, giant man who is like sinking into the ground. It's just his face, arms, legs. I looked it up online to see actual photos of it. It's pretty creepy. But then all through these issues, we see Chad looking at his phone when it's buzzing and it says Ma calling. And we never saw him take those calls. I was starting to wonder, is M.A. an acronym rather than it being his mother? I wasn't even sure.
No, I always assumed it was his ma. And But what I did not predict was that would actually become the major plot of issue 6, like that it would come back. Like, I thought, again, I was getting a kind of Harvey Pekar vibe. I thought we were just getting little snippets of life, in bits and pieces for 6 issues. I really did not expect that he had a kind of story arc that he was kind of working through and building towards.
Right, because then we see like the stuff about his grandmother and flashbacks to when he was a kid and when he stole a Snickers bar to give to his grandma, and then the shop owner was accusing him of stealing, and his mom took his side and didn't believe the shop owner and even slapped her.
Yeah, well, it's a bit more than that, because it's not just that the mom might not have believed her. Maybe the mom did believe her, but then the shopkeeper says, you people always just do what you want.
Plays the you people card, and that doesn't win her any friends.
Yeah, it just makes this racist remark, and then mom slaps her. There's all sorts of stuff that comes out in that 6th issue, because it's all mostly told in 1985, or not mostly, but there's a big chunk of it is set in 85 when he's young and he's talking to his grandma and he has a very good relationship with her. And we actually learn in this issue that he's Muslim, which we did not know for 5 issues. I don't. It's not necessarily relevant, but it's just an interesting detail. I like it when we get details about him, like we did in issue 3 when he told us that he didn't get in on some sort of affirmative action scheme. He actually found a way into Georgetown.
Well, and speaking of details about Chad, I think it was the letters in issue 6 that he mentions his wife. Like, Chad's married? Talk about burying the lead. I had no idea. When did this happen?
Yeah. It must be after this period.
I think it might have been fairly recent because, in the Chad and Amsterdam stuff, there's no mention of a wife. It seems like he's single.
Right.
So, yeah, this might be something that's happened.
They're like looking at girls and commenting on the college chicks.
Definitely 20 years ago he wasn't married. But then throughout issue 6 we see like we've kind of jumped back to the places in the earlier issues where he was seeing his mom calling and not answering, and we see mostly from his mom's point of view, and where she keeps trying to call him and he's not answering and she doesn't know why, and his grandmother is steadily getting her conditions worsening. And
I don't even know if it's necessarily suddenly. So I don't know how long Chad has been dealing, but he's not. We've seen several incidents of him not answering the phone call from his mother, like once per issue,
over several issues,
over 5 issues. The 5 previous issues, mom is called. Now he does say in the letters column that he doesn't ignore his mom's call all the time. So maybe he was answering her calls, but it seems like she might have been declining over the entire period that Chad was distracted by dealing.
Yeah.
Now, how long was that? It's like more than a year? I think. But at one stage it says that he was dealing between 2004 and 2008. I don't know if it's just the first year. It's not clear. But anyway, my point is I'm not sure that Grandma declined that quickly. I think she's been getting worse. And maybe this is finally when he answers the call from mom and then learns that it's like the final moments.
By the end of the issue, his grandma can't even talk. But when he does finally answer the phone, he's already having a really crappy day. Yeah. Because he's stuck on the interstate in bumper-to-bumper traffic and late for an appointment with a client. And then he takes this call and his mom is like, your grandmother's going to go. You need to say your last words to her. And he doesn't share with us what he actually said. We just get a couple pages of traffic.
That would be too intimate, I think, to reveal that. Even in an autobio comic,
It's still a gut punch issue ending.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. By the way, we haven't talked about the art, which, again, is great, but there's like a 2-page spread in issue 3 of like the campus building. It's on like page 22 with all the trees and the students, all these students sitting on the lawn enjoying the beautiful weather, and you can see Chad staying. By the way, it's very easy to somehow know who Chad is in this drawing. I don't know how she pulled that off. But the point I want to make is, so he mentioned in the back matter of issue 1, maybe, that she had drawn something like 600 children's books.
Wow.
And I don't know if she's slumming it. Like, how much money is she getting for this? This work is incredible. How long did it take to do this drawing, like, of this campus building with these trees and all these people, and just have the skill to make Chad the obvious character in this crowd of people? And my mind was blown by. I'm like, you're drawing 6, 7, 8 issues of this series and getting probably $0 for it. I'm guessing. Like, what is the relationship here? What's the friendship or the financial relationship?
Is she his wife?
Yeah.
Total speculation, but
no, it doesn't seem to be based on the letters. But I was like, wow, like that's something. I guess she has faith in the material that she's like, I'm going to draw this. And he said, I think that they sold 1,000 copies of issue 1. That's not enough to pay an artist for this amount of work, it seems to me.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's really, really sharp, easy to understand art. And it's kind of... making it, that's kind of a low bar, but yeah, I think she does a really good job.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think we ever mentioned too, like last time, that there's only like shades of green are the only color in it. It's like almost a black and white comic, except for the like weed green and a few other shades of green that are in it. And somebody asked a question at the back of one of the issues, it must have been 6, like, is it risographed? And it's not. It was just done in a computer. Again, she's done this remarkable color job on it.
In a way to make it look like it was Riso. It sounded like that was almost intentional.
Yes,
like, we'll make it look Riso, but it isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense because we're looking at a digital copy and it looks like Riso, but...
That's right. Oh, and another thing was, we haven't mentioned, again, he's really playing with your expectations, I guess, of him, or I don't know what. I'm not sure if I'm describing this in the right way, but every issue starts with a quote from something, and it's usually like a hip-hop song or a rap song or something like that. And then suddenly, issue 6, we get a quote from a Tennyson poem, which is not what you're expecting based on the previous issues, right?
Right.
Like, he knows his stuff. And by the way, there was an issue where we got to see his scores, his marks from school.
He put his grade transcript in one of the issues. Yeah.
Yeah, and must be number 4. And it's interesting because he did really well on all the like media courses, right? Like the film, literature, poetry. He seemed to flunk 2 or 3, which were like American culture kind of courses, and the religious course that he was taking from that lady, Professor Cho.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what is a W grade.
I wanted to ask you that. I thought that was some American thing that I didn't know what it was.
It must be a Georgetown thing. I don't know. I mean, the radicalism in American history, he got an F, but Buddhist religious thought he got a W.
And that's 0 grade points for that.
Maybe withdraw. I'll bet it's withdraw, because we see him withdrawing from the class in the comic.
Yes, right.
That's the one where the teacher was concerned about his performance. Right,
okay. So are those the only 2?
There's also a court constitution shaping nation that he withdrew from.
Right. So like the media ones are fine.
But the others are all A's and B's otherwise.
Yeah. I wonder why he didn't like radicalism in American history or the court constitution one. I want to know the history of those. We get a bit of the Buddhist one. Like he took the course because he had friends that were Buddhist, right? That's what he tells us in the story of the issue.
And he'd also seen the teacher in an Ali G video.
That's right.
And I found it. He tells you what to Google, like Ali G religion.
Right.
And I saw what she looked like.
Yeah.
I thought she looked younger in the comic, and it was, I mean, the video is from before the comic, but she looks younger in the comic.
Right. Well, speaking of which, you know, in issue 2, the artist did this funny thing. Well, it might have been in the script. Jennifer did this funny thing Juliet DeWitt, where everybody had a black bar over their eyes, so you couldn't tell who they were. As if you could identify these people in a comic book. Well, I guess maybe it's slightly possible, but from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it seemed to be like a gag. Now, in issue 2, that stops. There's no more hiding that gag about hiding people's identities goes away, including that professor who's identified by name, and he tells us how to Google her. I guess she wasn't involved in any crime, so it doesn't matter. But he does maintain the bars over the eyes of that rich white girl, the cute girl who keeps showing up 3-4 hours late. And also there's a guy,
the guy in the green jacket.
Yes. That was his friend that was a source, yeah. And also there's like 1 or 2 other characters, like this guy on a skateboard shows up. There's a few people that he's like protecting their identities, but...
But yeah, those girls that he was using their apartment, he doesn't do that with them.
No,
and we see them using cocaine, not just marijuana.
Yes. Yeah, so how are these people identifiable? I don't know. It's very odd. And, you know, did he give her photos of these people that she's drawing from, or did she just make them up? In which case, why do we need the black bars? It's so funny and weird.
Yeah, we don't know if they really resemble the actual people.
Yeah. And also, did you figure out what the cover of issue 4 was supposed to be? Because there's some sort of sneaky thing going on.
Yeah, he mentions in the letter section, and I'm like, I'm not getting it. I mean, all of the issues have the re-up looking like it's from his Nokia phone screen.
Yeah.
And above that, on issue 4, he's holding a bag of weed, but Yeah, I'm not picking up if this is supposed to be a reference to something.
Yeah, and in the back cover, the hand of somebody else is handing over a wad of bills with rubber band around it, and there's a digital pattern in the background, just like of black and green dots, which is like something out of the Matrix. And then the bottom of the screen is full of the black dots, and at the top, it's like snowing down black dots into the green.
I wonder if you look at the full cover, maybe it's supposed to be like the Sistine Chapel ceiling with God and Adam or whoever, and the hands reaching toward each other. Maybe that's what he's doing, or what Juliet is doing.
I don't know. Well, here's the note he says in the back matter. He says, respect to whoever notices the impetus for the front cover. The clues are there. Anyhow, we thought it would be the perfect graphic for putting both the hustle within the story and the progress of the actual comic into second gear. So it's somehow supposed to mean things are ramping up, but I don't. I didn't figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know. It's my only guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Chad will tell us probably. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, but I mean, it's just, it was so great. It was really so great. This is really, and with the thing with the mom and the grandma and stuff, this thing is actually turning into a full-fledged graphic novel rather than, I assumed it was kind of a self-published, almost zine kind of thing about this guy telling autobiographical stories. And it's actually there's something deeper and more structured, like really well put together happening on a larger scale on it.
Yeah, I think that was my skepticism originally, because I was thinking, okay, he's just going to kind of march through the events of that time. But it's more structured than that. Yeah.
So it's really impressive. But again, I thought, rereading them, I thought, okay, issue 6 is going to be the last one. So now we really don't know how many more issues there's going to be.
Maybe it's an ongoing series. Just keep going.
Maybe it'll link up to Chad in Amsterdam. Like there'll be like a episode 3, like Revenge of the Sith type moment where it all links up.
And we see Chad get the Darth Vader costume.
That's right.
No, wait.
That's right.
But yeah, so there's more to come at some point.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Chad's books are for sale at chadinamsterdam.nl. The link is in the show notes. Coming up, we look at David Dye's latest forays into Old English literature, commentary on world events, and EC-style horror. By the way, don't forget we now have a voicemail. To leave a message, click the Leave a Voicemail link on the sidebar at deconstructingcomics.com.
Hey there, Bat fans. It's JB in New Orleans, your host of Bat 77, the 70s Batman podcast. I am a child of the 1970s and a lifelong Batman fan. And each month, I summarize and review a randomly picked Batman comic story published in the 1970s. From the pages of Detective Comics, Batman, The Brave and the Bold, and World's Finest. I also read from the letters pages and highlight all the memorable ads from the comics. On past episodes, I have also discussed Batman's appearances on Saturday morning television and the Power Records audio adventures. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream or download your favorite podcasts. Or you can find me on the web at bat77podcast.libsyn.com.
Okay, we're back. Still with Kumar. Hello.
Hello.
And yeah, so...
Should we give them a peek behind the curtain and tell them it's been like weeks between part 1 and part 2?
No, we're doing all this on the same day. No.
A little inside baseball there for the listeners.
I wasn't even thinking that Kumar was going to be doing the second half. I had originally asked others who, for various reasons, couldn't. So we get an all Tim and Kumar episode here, even though we're talking about two separate creators. Maybe you should also mention, I mean, I enjoy these creators' work. We might be giving them a little bit too much play. I don't know. I mean, like about once every year or two, we've been talking about them. So I don't know. Listeners, tell us what you think. Do you want to hear more about the latest from the same creators, or should we go back to talking about Alan Moore books a lot, or or stuff that we've? I mean, we can always use new ideas too. If there's something you'd like to hear, please write to us about it. Anyway, so this is David Dye. We've talked about before. He's been on the show once back before Mulele retired from podcasting. Mm-hmm. So we've got 3 issues of Amazing Tales here.
Are these? So we got PDFs, but does he do print versions as well?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, I'll link to his site. So, first issue, Amazing Tales 6, which is all Beowulf all the time.
And it's 44 pages, which is significant for a self-publisher, I think.
Yeah, I think it's about his normal length. I didn't go back
they're all
compare,
like, the issue 8 is 36 pages and 7 is, I think, 28. That's pretty, like, hefty for something you're doing all by yourself.
Yeah, it is. Things you might pick up at a con or something might be 10 or 12 pages.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and half size. I think this is like a full size, maybe A4-ish comic. So, boy, Beowulf. I read Beowulf in college, like almost 40 years ago. Yeah. And we had to read it in the original ye olde English. So it was a little hard for me to absorb. This makes it a lot. I wish I'd had this when I was in college.
Tim, it really struck me reading this how good comics are for religious myths. Or not necessarily religious, but just old myths. I'm thinking of this. I'm thinking of like all those Hindu religious comics I read as a kid, or even something like Crumb's Genesis. Comics are a very digestible way to absorb this material. And I have to say, his presentation of the Beowulf story is extra good because there are very few captions in it. It's mostly told through dialogue and action. There are some captions, and they're pretty well written as well. Like the prose is really good. It's not purple or anything like that. So it was a really digestible. And I too remember. I don't know if I ever read Beowulf or only heard stuff secondhand. I knew very little about it, but this was very digestible. And there was stuff I had no idea about, like the whole second half with Beowulf's mother. Grendel's mother. I didn't know anything about that part of the story. I didn't know the part 3 with the dragon or any of that stuff. So it was pretty good in that regard.
I always wondered, doesn't Grendel's mother have a name?
If she...
Never given.
I don't know. He names a lot of other stuff, like including the sword and the...
But, I mean, in the original, she has no name. She's just Grendel's mother. So
yes, that's what I'm... that's what I meant, is if she had a name, certainly David Dye would have put it in there.
Yeah.
Initially I had questions like, where did Grendel come from? What is he? Like, that's never, I guess, not in the myths, but they just call him a troll, so I guess he's just a troll. That's it, that's it. But there's stuff in here that's like nonsensical kind of stuff, like mythological nonsense, right? So the Vikings, maybe they're not Vikings, they build this cabin, this feasting hall called Hierot, and they're making so much noise that it offends Grendel, and Grendel starts attacking the soldiers that are sleeping in the cabin every night.
You kids keep it down over there. Turn that stereo down.
Exactly. So he shows up every night, he kills anybody that's sleeping in there, and then we get a caption that says, this is on numbered page 5, it's PDF page 7, only those who stayed in Hierot were taken, those who slept in the houses were safe. Grendel prowled the roads and moors at night, nobody young or old was safe. That doesn't add up. It just told us one panel ago that only the ones who stayed in Heorot were taken. So why is he also attacking people on the road? Also, Beowulf shows up and he fakes being asleep, and his men are being killed, and he just wakes up and kills, and then he attacks Grendel. And I'm like, well, why did anybody stay sleeping in that cabin? Why didn't any of them fake sleeping? Why did Beowulf allow all his men to be killed before he jumped up and attacked Grendel? Lot of
or at least
stupid
one guy,
stuff like you'd expect, like biblical errors, or any religious mythology has all these kind of holes in the story due to being told maybe hundreds of times, or just clumsiness when it was originally written. But that's all in here. And it almost doesn't matter because the art's really holds it all together, I think. It has a kind of, I don't know, you must have discussed his art style in previous episodes, but it reminds me a little bit of like the Peonies, or ironically even young Matt Wagner, his early Grendel stuff looked a little bit like this as well.
Yeah. I had to say, I mean, I don't think I've ever said this before. I've always kind of thought it, but no matter what kind of story Dave draws, I always feel like the art has a little bit of intentional or unintentional humor in it.
Definitely.
Particularly, I noticed in the dragon story.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's a great dragon. I feel like he had a lot of fun drawing that dragon.
Yeah.
But there's a panel where the dragon is chasing a horse, a pig, and a cow. And the way that those animals are drawn, especially the horse's mouth, is just hilarious.
Yeah, and it's got like the cow's got a cartoon look on his face of like anxiety and terror. Yeah, and the pig as well. Yeah.
Yeah, or definitely her face. That's definitely a female cow.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is actually like, it's a great, I mean, that's an example of what I was talking about before. This page where the dragon attacks the village is just 4 silent panels. It's not like a single panel with a caption saying, then the dragon attacked the village.
Yeah, it doesn't John burn it to death.
No, yeah, no.
Half the page is narration.
Yeah, it's really good in that way. But at the same time, it was kind of like, well, this is the story of Grendel, and I don't really know how much I have to say about that side of it. I mean, the presentation is really good, as I said, in terms of art and the writing of it. It's interesting. There's a page here where Beowulf talks about his history up until that point, where he's like, his life is kind of flashing before his eyes before he fights the dragon. And we're going to see that again in issue 8. We're going to see something similar. So it seems to be a strategy that David Dye comes back to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's move on to number 7, The War That Time Forgot. And I thought this was pretty clever. I don't want to say too much about it because there's spoilers, but so basically there's an Aussie who's helping Ukraine fight against Russia, and then he finds himself somehow transported back to prehistoric times in that same location. And it was interesting how, I mean, there's, of course, some kind of twists to the time travel and everything, and also felt like there was a certain amount of wish fulfillment in this story.
Yes. Okay, so this was an odd one. Of the 3 issues we looked at, this is the one I liked the least. But I thought I was going to like it the most, because you open it and you get an op-ed from David Dye describing his outrage over the invasion of Ukraine and how that inspired the story. And you're like, okay, this is going to be a good one. And then you get into it, it's very Aussie, like the dialogue that we get from this guy. At one point, it's really funny when the Neanderthal version of Putin gets onto he's like riding a wild boar or something, and we get a thought balloon from this pilot saying, what a wanker. So there's some funny stuff like that, but mostly it's basically, and he admits to it in the introduction, it's basically a ripoff of an Edgar Rice Burroughs type pulp adventure story, like the John Carter of Mars stories, or even to a certain extent the Tarzan stories, where this guy gets transported into the past. I think it's even specifically the people that time forgot. He meets this beautiful woman who's like can't speak, like she doesn't have any language. So it's a bit like the Born Sexy Yesterday trope, where there's a beautiful woman, but she's like a newborn baby. And this one was kind of full of cliches, but once in a while you get this kind of references to modern day Russia. Like the Russians are called orcs by the Ukrainian soldiers. And he starts fighting these kind of Neanderthal type characters, and he's assuming that they're modern day Russians. He hasn't realized he's traveled back in time at this stage, and he still calls them orcs, but they're like almost like actual orcs, right? And then he meets these Neanderthal versions of like all the Russian top brass, including Putin. It's a weird one because in a sense those nods are very rare, right? There's like a few, they're sprinkled in here and there. But then when they do come in, he really hits you over the head with it. Like he's like, hey, this is a Neanderthal version of Putin. He doesn't like let you work it out as a reader. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that might have been interesting.
He tells you.
Rather than just practically an arrow pointing to him saying Putin.
Yes, exactly. There's a little caption box under each guy, under each Neanderthal, telling which Russian oligarch he's the predecessor of, right? The ancestor of.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like too in your face. While at the same time, when you remove that, all you've got this kind of cliched Edgar Rice Burroughs adventure. I'm not sure what to make of it. Also, this one did the opposite of the previous issue. It's full of first-person captions. Every panel almost has a narration from our main character, which is similar to those Edgar Rice Burroughs stories where you're just told what's going on all the time. So I felt like the narrative structure wasn't as good as well in this one.
You think it would have worked better if it were more just silent panels? It's hard. It's really hard to say because he's trying to, in this issue and the next issue, he's trying to mimic other styles of comics or novels. And these kinds of captions or this kind of narration is a part of that. So it takes away the nostalgic feeling if you remove that. Now, maybe the part of the problem is I don't have nostalgia for Edgar Rice Burroughs stories, personally, right? That might be an element, because if you read some of the letters in the next issue, people are like, hey, this was a great story. You know what I mean? So they did connect with the throwback to the Pulp Fiction style of storytelling. So if you take it out, you end up with maybe that's the main juice of it is the narration. You know what? If you take it out, there's not much there. I don't know. I don't know what the solution to this is. I do feel like you do feel his anger about the Ukraine invasion come through in those scenes. I think maybe it should have been like that all the time. Like just be over the top all the time with it, or take it out completely. Somehow it's not working at the level that it's at. You mean which is not working? I mean,
yeah, like the
Ukraine part of it.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, So maybe make the whole thing really more. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. I didn't try to come up with this thing. The art's great again. The caricatures of the oligarchs are pretty great. Putin riding his bear is hilarious. That drawing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't have much familiarity with Burroughs, but I don't know. I thought it was kind of an interesting idea. I guess it worked for me.
Yeah. Maybe I'm, after the time travel stuff, you get that kind of time travel trope where you meet someone in the present who is a descendant of someone in the past. And he meets this girl who's a descendant of that girl that he met in Neolithic times or whatever. And she's had this heirloom passed down for must be thousands of years, tens of thousands of years.
The thing really survived a lot.
And that made me wonder if maybe I was taking it too seriously, and I should be reading it as more of a lighthearted joke, like a romp. Maybe I misread the tone of the comic.
Maybe so, although the Ukraine part of it makes you take it more seriously.
Exactly. When you read the first page, you're like, oh, this is going to be a serious issue. And you start reading it, and it's like, well, this is kind of all just Pulp Fiction stuff. And then you read these bizarre time travel stuff at the end. There's like, how can this be? Anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
when you said wish fulfillment, that's like a good description of it, I think.
Maybe he was a little conflicted about what he was trying to say with this. Maybe because the Ukraine part of it obviously is deadly serious. But the comic is not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's a little more playful. All right. Finally, issue 8. Where the title Amazing Tales has been blotted out. Amazing is blotted out with the word creepy. This is Creepy Tales.
This is my favorite one.
2 stories in it. We get color with Ben Day dots, so it looks like an old EC horror comic.
It's been the pages have been artificially yellowed so they look like it's an old comic, not even fresh off the press.
Yeah, it came out of somebody's attic.
This is why I wondered if he is actually publishing print comics. This would be expensive to print in color if you're just a guy doing it by yourself, I imagine. But anyway, yes. So yeah, as you said, it's, I guess the Ben Day dots. Oh yeah, they are. Looks like they are there. Yeah, this was interesting because unlike the previous one, which to me read like Edgar Rice Burroughs with some jabs thrown in at Russia, this one actually there's 2 stories in here, and we get the creepy format of comics, but it's like not an 8-page story. This is like a 16, 20-page story that's given quite a lot of room to breathe and have some twists and turns, like more than just the one of the EC story. And again, he doesn't use the captions like EC would. It's all done in dialogue and thought balloons. So it really has a kind of natural flow. And there were some twists and turns where I had to kind of flip back and see what had happened earlier and reread earlier scenes and things like that and reassess what I'd already read. This worked really pretty well for what looks like it's going to be a traditional EC Comics horror story or Warren horror story. It actually has a kind of fresh take on it. I felt, and again is really well drawn. The colors work really well for trying to evoke that particular era.
Yeah, I mean, this is not my favorite genre, but I thought, it was well done. Some nice twists, and it's sufficiently creepy.
Yeah, it is creepy. There's an amazing full-page splash, and this is another thing where these guys are like going to open this door, and they're like creeping up to this door, and they're like, all right, are we going to open this door? And they've got an axe, and they're like, come on, are we going to do it? And then there's a whole page where they're like, okay, are we going to, let's do it. And then they're about to do it, and then you get to the next page, and then it's a full-page splash of the horror that's behind the door, which they've opened. And again, I want to know if this is a physical issue. Do you turn the page and then get that?
Well, it looks like it. Well, let's see. So page
10.
9 would be, a right side page. So, and I'm looking at his website, and yes, he does offer a print version of this.
Okay. So, So that's pretty great.
Yeah, that's a good page turn.
The timing of that page turn is really good. They never did that in EC. It would just be the next panel. It would be the bottom panel of the page. Your eyes could wander down there and see what the twist is going to be before you got to it. And that's not even the final twist of the story, because then they do some stuff that has consequences later on. We learn some stuff about these guys that have shown up at this cruddy old hotel for the night, and the innkeeper is like a really crotchety guy who's very weird. and they've got this locked room that they go into, all this stuff, but then more stuff keeps piling on. Not only that, then we get another whole flashback page from the innkeeper, much like the Beowulf flashback, where we get his whole history in like a full-page thought balloon kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I this is in Australia, and it had some Aussie slang in it, and I wasn't familiar with Tucker as a word for food. I thought one of the characters named Tucker.
Yeah, there's this, much like the previous issue, has a lot. It's very Aussie, and there was even a couple of words in there that I didn't know what they were. I can't remember what they were now, but certainly I'd never heard them before. A couple terms. I can't remember what they are. Are
you familiar with Tucker for food?
Tucker, I've heard that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I thought that was a pretty good story. And the other one in this issue is called Were-dingo, as in werewolf.
The title alone was like, okay, here we go. Because I'd read the one about the Australian pilot in the Ukraine. I'd read the one about the two guys at this Australian inn, and we get a kind of history of gold. The gold rush in Australia is in that story as well. And here we get a story called Were-dingo, and I'm like, okay, here we go. This is going to be very Australian. But maybe it's going to be like more jokey than the other stories. Well, the other ones are pretty jokey as well in their own way. But this is just from the title alone. I thought, okay, here we go.
Yeah, well, then you could do the really funny versions like Were kangaroo or something. Were koala.
Yeah, by the way, this is not new to Dave Dye. I can think of I think there are at least 2 Australian movies about like vicious outback creatures, including the third Howling movie, which I think was called The Marsupials. So that was like a Howling movie set in Australia. And there was another one directed by the guy that did all those Duran Duran videos. Anyway, I can't remember his name or the name of the movie. Never mind. But they do exist.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a genre that exists, is outback Australian cryptids.
Well, everything in Australia wants to kill you. That's...
Yes. Yes.
The line.
It's also very, like, specific about real Australian locations, like Whoop Whoop, which is the location where the Were-dingo story happens. These are, like, real places. So he doesn't shy away from any of that.
Yeah, I mean, Whoop Whoop sounds pretty funny in English, but yeah, I figured it was probably a real location, like an Aboriginal name for some place.
Absolutely, yeah. See, these campers are attacked by a dingo, a giant dingo. And the next day they call in this bushranger to the mayor's office, and it's like funny right away because the bushranger's like, if this is about those 3 cases of scotch stolen from your club last night, I know nothing about it. And the mayor's like, what? My club was burgled? And the whole page, the mayor's
he's just stuck
like,
on that.
He's stuck on that. It's like this gag in the like first panel, like second panel of page 2 in this thing.
Yeah. My scotch, my profits, 3 cases, that's 36 bottles.
Yeah.
While the other 2 guys are talking about the Were-dingo.
Yeah. And this the bushranger is convinced it's not a Were-dingo. He thinks it's a warrigal. I don't know even what a warrigal is. But anyway, he is forced to go along with 2 Aboriginal trackers. And he's really cruel to them, and he sends away the woman. He even punches the guy in the face.
Yeah, I wasn't sure why Dave had him, like, dismiss the wife. Because I was expecting that to come back later in the story, and
I think it's because this guy keeps making mistakes. I think that's the point. Is the bushranger keeps digging himself further into the hole. Every decision he makes is a wrong decision. Like he needed 2 trackers,
right? And then after the wife is gone, then the husband, I think his name is Jimmy, is talking about how she's the only one who's seen the Were-dingo, and my missus is one of the few who have seen it and survived. So yeah, it might have been useful to have her along.
Yeah, and then the tracker warns him about like the bloodstains, and he ignores it. He's like, "Shut up with that talk, you damned fool!" And then of course he's attacked finally by the dingo after he's made like 2 or 3 mistakes including almost stepping on a snake, etc., stuff like this. So he keeps getting worse and worse, and getting rid of the wife was the first step in that.
Okay.
But then, he's, the spoiler, it's a werewolf story. And we know this bushranger's an idiot, so you might guess what's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
But again, it's just, somehow this worked for me more than the Edgar Rice Burroughs story. These are horror comic cliches. Something about the humor of it or the repositioning of it in Australia somehow worked for me more than repositioning Edgar Rice Burroughs in the Ukraine. And I don't know. Again, maybe it's just because I like EC Comics horror stories, and I don't care much about Edgar Rice Burroughs. Maybe that was all it is to it.
And you live in Australia?
Yeah, maybe that affected. I don't know. Yeah, sure. I mean, I laughed that it was set in Whoop Whoop. You know what I mean? I don't know, but I connected with these, and this is shorter. This is like a 20-page story, and then like a 12-page story instead of one 28-page story.
Yeah, I think the Where Dingo is just 8. I'm looking at the page numbers on the.
Yeah, so pages. That's, to me, that's more. I don't know. It seemed to be the right length for a parody story, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, 20 pages and 8 pages. And then there's some extra art in the back.
Yeah.
Along with letters. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's just more good stuff from him.
Yeah. And I like the art in this one, maybe because it was in color. It kind of accentuated what he was going for. Yeah. This one was... I like this one the most, for sure.
Check the show notes for a link to buy Dave Dye's work. Thanks to our patrons for supporting Deconstructing Comics, Critiquing Comics, and our other podcasts. To join them, go to patreon.com/deconcomics. Patrons get access to podcasts about the early years of The Amazing Spider-Man, Jim Starlin's run on Captain Marvel, including the expectations-defying graphic novel The Death of Captain Marvel, and, coming next month, Silver Age Batman. But you can only hear these shows if you pledge at least $4 a month. That's patreon.com/deconcomics. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderson. Next week, Emmett and I continue our walk through Jack Kirby's Eternals, with issues 14 through 16, in which we start to sense that Marvel Editorial is trying to rein Jack in. What's good and bad about these issues? We'll discuss them in detail next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.